There is a memorandum in the Cordova Federal Archives, declassified in 1987, that contains a single sentence, underlined in red ink. Original cartographic surveys of Bellhaven Municipal District to be redrawn. Per Federal directive, existing documentation to be archived under restricted access protocols. The memo is dated the 3rd of March 1894, signed by Federal Surveyor General Marcus Trent, and addressed to the Cordova Territorial Mapping Commission. No explanation is given for why the maps needed to be redrawn, what was wrong with the original surveys, or what the federal directive referenced. I found the memo while researching property boundary disputes in late 19th century territorial settlements. I was trying to understand how land ownership was established when surveying technology was still developing and official boundaries were being formalized. The Bellhaven Municipal District, a region that would later become part of 3 separate provinces, was surveyed extensively between 1867 and 1893. Multiple survey teams documented the terrain, waterways, settlements, and natural features. Their work formed the basis for all subsequent property deeds, municipal boundaries, and infrastructure planning. Then in March 1894, those surveys were ordered to be redrawn. The memo provides no context, just the directive to redraw and the instruction to archive the original documentation under restricted access. The restriction designation means the original surveys were not destroyed, but they were removed from public availability and placed in federal custody. I requested access to the restricted archive referenced in the memo. The Federal Archives maintains a restricted documents collection requiring special clearance for access. I submitted a research request explaining my work on historical surveying methods. The request was approved, and I was granted access to examine materials from the Bellhaven original cartographic surveys. The archive contains 47 survey maps created between 1867 and 1893. The maps show the Bellhaven region in extraordinary detail: topographical features, water systems, settlement locations, roads, and natural landmarks. The surveys were conducted by teams from the Federal Territorial Survey Office using standard methods of the period. The maps are professionally rendered, clearly labeled, and appear to be accurate representations of the region as it existed during that time. I compared them to the redrawn maps issued after March 1894. The redrawn versions are also professionally executed. They show the same general region, but they are not identical to the originals. Here is what strikes me about the differences. The redrawn maps show adjustments to the courses of 3 rivers: the Milford River, the Eastern Branch, and Caulfield Creek. In the original surveys, these waterways follow specific paths through the region. In the redrawn versions, their courses are shifted, sometimes by as much as half a mile, repositioning them relative to settlements and property boundaries. The redrawn maps also show alterations to elevation contours. Several hill formations that appear in the original surveys are reduced in height or repositioned on the redrawn versions. One significant ridge formation visible in the 1891 original survey is entirely absent from the 1894 redrawn map of the same area. The settlement locations remain mostly consistent between the original and redrawn versions, but their positions relative to natural features change due to the repositioned waterways and altered terrain. These are not minor corrections. These are substantive alterations to the documented geography of the region. I searched for explanations. Was there an error in the original surveys that required correction? Survey teams in the 1860s through 1890s used increasingly sophisticated equipment, but mistakes were certainly possible. Perhaps the redrawn maps reflected more accurate measurements. Except the original surveys were conducted by multiple independent teams over 26 years. The teams used different methodologies and worked in different time periods, yet their maps show consistent waterway courses and terrain features. The consistency across multiple surveys suggests the original documentation was reliable. The redrawn maps, created in a single coordinated effort in 1894, show the altered geography. Now here is where the timing becomes difficult to explain. I found property deeds filed in Bellhaven between 1870 and 1893. The deeds reference specific landmarks and natural features to establish boundaries. A deed from 1882 describes a property line as following the eastern bank of Milford River from the junction with Caulfield Creek north to the base of Harper's Ridge. Using the original survey maps, that description makes geographical sense. The river, the creek junction, and the ridge are all positioned logically relative to each other. Using the redrawn maps from 1894, the description becomes problematic. The repositioned Milford River no longer has the same relationship to Caulfield Creek. Harper's Ridge is shown in a different location. The property boundary described in the 1882 deed cannot be accurately plotted on the 1894 redrawn map. Yet the redrawn maps became the official cartographic reference for the region. All subsequent property surveys, infrastructure projects, and municipal planning used the 1894 versions. The original surveys were restricted and effectively removed from public use. I found a letter dated April 1894, 1 month after the redrawing directive, from a Bellhaven land surveyor named Colin Dresch to the Territorial Mapping Commission. Dresch wrote, "I have received the revised cartographic materials for Bellhaven District. I must note significant discrepancies between the new maps and established survey markers in the field. Several waterway positions shown on the revised maps do not correspond to actual watercourses. I request clarification on how to reconcile these differences for ongoing property surveys." The Commission's response, dated May 1894, states, "The revised cartographic materials reflect updated federal standards and supersede all previous documentation. Field surveys should be conducted in accordance with revised maps. Discrepancies between physical features and cartographic representation should be noted in survey reports, but do not constitute grounds for map revision." The Commission instructed Dresch to use maps that did not match the actual terrain. Discrepancies between the maps and reality were to be noted but not corrected. But here is the detail that doesn't fit. I found infrastructure project reports from the late 1890s and early 1900s that reference difficulties in construction planning due to unexpected terrain variations. A railway line proposed in 1897 encountered a ridge formation that did not appear on the official maps. A bridge project in 1901 found that a river was not where the maps indicated it should be. In both cases, the projects had to be revised mid-construction. The engineers were planning based on the redrawn maps. The actual geography matched the original surveys that had been restricted. I tried to find the federal directive mentioned in the March 1894 memo. The memo states that the redrawing was done per federal directive, but provides no directive number, issuing agency, or policy reference. I searched Federal Territorial Administration records from 1893 and 1894 for any directive related to cartographic revision. I found policies on surveying standards, guidelines for map production, and procedures for correcting documented errors. I found no directive ordering the wholesale redrawing of accurate survey maps. The March 1894 memo references a directive that appears to have left no other documentary trace. I searched for other regions where similar map revisions occurred. If this was part of a broader federal policy to update territorial cartography, other areas should show similar patterns. I found no comparable cases. Other territorial regions surveyed during the same period have continuous cartographic documentation. When corrections were made, they were documented with explanations of what errors were being fixed. Bellhaven is the only region I found where original surveys were replaced wholesale with substantively altered versions, and the originals were restricted from public access. But here is what bothers me most. I found a geological survey report from 1908 that studied the Bellhaven region's water systems and terrain. The report was conducted by federal geologists who had no connection to the earlier mapping controversy. Their findings describe waterway courses and terrain features that match the 1867 to 1893 original surveys, almost exactly. The geologists in 1908, working independently with modern equipment, documented the same geography that the original survey teams had recorded. Their findings did not match the 1894 redrawn maps. Yet the redrawn maps remained the official reference. Property deeds continued to be written using the altered cartography. Infrastructure projects continued to encounter unexpected discrepancies between maps and reality. And the original surveys that accurately represented the region's geography remained in restricted federal archives. I found one more document that I haven't been able to explain. It is a notation in the Federal Surveyor General's Office logbook from February 1894, 1 month before the redrawing directive. The notation reads, "Meeting with Territorial Commission representatives. Bellhaven cartographic matter. Discussed implementation timeline and archival protocols. Commission requests expedited processing." The notation suggests meetings occurred before the official directive was issued. The cartographic matter was being discussed and planned. Then the directive was issued, the maps were redrawn, and the originals were restricted. But the notation doesn't explain what the matter was, what required the maps to be altered, what made accurate surveys problematic enough to warrant federal intervention, and restricted archival status. The memo from March 1894 is 3 sentences long. It orders the redrawing of maps, mandates archival restriction of the originals, and references a federal directive that cannot be located. It was declassified in 1987, 93 years after it was written, making the original surveys publicly accessible for the first time since they were restricted. Those original surveys show a region's geography as it was documented by multiple independent teams over 26 years. The redrawn maps show a different version of that geography. Rivers moved, terrain altered, features repositioned or removed. The redrawn version became official reality, even though it conflicted with the actual landscape and caused decades of confusion for anyone trying to build something based on the maps. The March 1894 memo sits in the Federal Archives, declassified but unexplained. 3 sentences, 1 underlined directive, no justification, and 47 original survey maps in restricted storage, showing a version of Bellhaven that was documented accurately but officially replaced with something else.